I'll do a quick off-camera now. Okay. I'm Bilal Yusuf. I'll be the first and third speaker inside government representing Evergreen. The order, oh no, I spoke a bunch of water. Well, whatever. The order is going to be really simple. It's going to be top of case in 3 minutes. Time begins in 3, 2, 1, go. Never been proud to affirm the motion. On balance, participation in competitive debate teaches high school students to change the world for the better. 3 observations at the top of case. The first one is that competitive debate encompasses all debate events, not just parliamentary debate. We don't think it's going to be too important, but it is important to take into account empirics from like LD, policy, PF, and other competitive debate events. The second one is participation in teaching debaters to do good means that is the main takeaway the debaters take from debate. So that means that as a participant in a competitive debate round, that is what you are learning from debate. Like when you are done with debate and after you're done with your rounds, you think that you want to do something to make the world better. The third observation is that changing the world for the better is probably subjective. Like no one thinks that what would make the world better is the same for everyone. So we think that we should evaluate this round under what each debater thinks would make the world better. So if I think making the world better would be like erasing capitalism, I'll take steps towards like doing that, I guess. Okay. The first advantage is going to be about lay debate. There are a couple points here. The first is that right now we think debate is really educational. The A point is that topical education teaches about the real world, stuff like housing, international relations, the environment, etc. The B point is studies show that debaters compared to non-debaters actually create a higher rate of graduation past secondary enrollment by up to 29%, which means debaters usually pursue higher education, which means they can make more change in the world. The C point is debaters know a lot about the world compared to other people our age. We think that most people in high school don't really know what is going on in Uganda or former Yugoslavia or what NATO intervention is. Yeah.
Is the framework articulation that to prove the resolution true, you have to prove that debaters think that it's good to change the world for the better, or that debate teaches students how to change the world for the better? So I don't know if that distinction is clear, but is it this it's like they think that they want it, they think it's good to change the world, or it teaches them how to change the world? What are you defending?
It teaches them how to change.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Okay. Time resumes in 3, 2, 1, go. So the implication here is that when debaters are more educated, not only are they more equipped to change the world, but also when you know about what's going on in the world, you're probably going to want to change it because not a lot of great stuff is happening right now. The second point is about improved advocacy. The A point is that debate teaches about the world and brings awareness to the youth about ongoing issues we ought to recognize. It teaches us to recognize things like the United States government or Trump empirically are doing bad things sometimes, and they interrogate our worldview. The B point is that by interrogating our worldviews, debaters are more likely to act based on their increased knowledge of the world. The C point is that it also teaches us to argue for things that we may not believe in, which is key to expanding worldview and understanding other kinds of people. Understanding other also solves the root cause of this kind of violence because it removes the incentive, because when you build empathy from other people by using their own perspective, by debating through the perspective and learning about how they view the world, it helps us actually want to create change as well. It clearly is going to build a better world because debaters become nicer people when they understand the sympathies of others. The third point under this intention is policymaking. The eighth point is that debaters become policymakers, and if not everyone, a notable amount. You can look at how the judge pool this year is actually made up of a decent amount of lawyers and students in policy and philosophy and other pre-law majors. Debate also teaches us to pass good policy because by understanding how the world functionally works and the people who live here, we can it gives us more incentive to become policymakers because it is something that debaters usually are great at because you choose to do debate and it's an activity you choose to compete in, which means you probably enjoy it to an extent. So you would also thus enjoy lawmaking or policymaking or something in a similar field. The B point is that fiat is good. We think that fiat is the idea that the plan passes, and we think that fiat helps us envision change and resist nihilism. But basically what this means is that when we envision how we can create change, and you force debaters to think about how to create change instead of just why it would happen, it helps us think about the opportunity we have when we're debating. Like for example, if a certain policy would be really good for the world, we envision how the effects that policy would have on the world, we want to enact it more because we realize the benefits it would have because we get to utilize fiat in debate. The C point here is on voting. We think debaters change the world for the better by voting for better policies. Studies show in India, with postgraduate MPs create more legislative efforts with better outcomes, and 67% of Trump's voters also lack a college degree, which proves that better educated debaters are going to make better change for the world, and they want to make better change for the world. I'll take the end of time. I apologize. I have a lot to think.
Okay.
The second extension here is our tech debate. Technical debate basically consists of progressive arguments like critiques, theory, philosophy, etc., anything out the norm of traditional debate. Few points. The first one is critiques. The aim of the critiques are pretty self-explanatory. It is literally a criticism of society or a criticism of what debaters are defending in the round. Whether it be about capitalism, feminism, anthropocentrism, K's ultimately provide very valuable insight into the real world and how it actually functions. The key point is that a K, by definition, calls for change. You identify a problem and you choose your avenue to solve it, which is called the alternative. Ks require an alternative, which is an alternative solution to solve the problem. For example, if I'm reading a cap K, I would provide an alternative of how I think we should solve capitalism and make change in the real world. Which brings me to the C point, which is the pre-fact impacts. K debate mainly focuses on impacts outside the debate round and how it actually affects us in the real world. This encourages debaters to take action and create change because they're literally interrogating how they can create change outside the round in the debate round. And this is really important because not only does it teach us how to do this, it teaches why it's important as well. Debaters are always going to have reasons why they should have pre-fact impact rounds, which is real world impacts over debate impacts. So when you're justifying why change in the real world actually matters, you're obviously going to be more likely to do it because you begin to believe what you debate, right? The deep point here is that K debate is huge. This tourney in itself has nearly 50% tech judges. They mean they like Ks. And other events like LD, PF, and policy, they're very commonplace. For example, the UK TOC right now for like LD, PF has a lot of K judges. I personally know a few people who are going and they themselves have prepped multiple different Ks. The E point is on epistemologies. We think that K debate forces us to think about what's good and bad and why that is, and this is key to making good decisions in the first place. We think that because debaters obviously have empathy, when they realize something is bad and they understand what is good and bad, they're probably going to take action to solve that. The second point here is on theory. And the theory is an argument about the rules of debate itself. It's basically important for norm setting, and it tells us how debate should and shouldn't operate. The viewpoint of the theory helps debaters understand how to make debate better by arguing and justifying these norms. And we think it's transferable to real world change because it does two things. The first one is that it teaches us that norms aren't set in stone. So just because something is societally acceptable or it's happening right now doesn't mean we can't change it, and it teaches us that we can make change in the real world. The second thing it does is that it trains debaters to justify making new norms and existing norms. Seeing abuse in and out of the debate space itself is a call for change. If you see abuse in the debate space and you read a theory shell against it, it's the thing as seeing something in the real world. If you see something you don't agree with or a norm that's wrong, you can just make change against it like you already have. The third point is that we think that tech debate is accessible. There's a lot of resources outlined like YouTube, Debate Guru, the Circuit Debater website, and so many other things. It's also super easy to network and debate these days because everybody is really nice and helpful, so it's not that hard for people to learn tech debate. Okay. Third advantage on leadership, basically, this contention is debaters compete under clubs and programs, and the 8 point is that clubs and programs often appoint captains to help younger debaters and officers, and teaching is a key skill that allows education to spread. Increase in education betters the world, and each year correlates to a 2% reduction in mortality risk. The people that clubs need officers, and being a position like treasurer, president, secretary, etc., creates leadership skills, and leadership skills are key to creating change because you need to be able to lead others in order to organize others, which is necessary for creating meaningful change. And these clubs their participation in competitive debate necessitates the creation of these communities and clubs because if nobody's actually competing in debate, and you have no avenue to compete in debate, then these clubs wouldn't exist. So uniquely because we get to participate in debate, it is helping us become better people because it necessitates the creation of these leadership positions as well. Never been proud to affirm, thank you.
Are you just okay if I sit? Yeah, okay. Great. Hello, my name is Mars Resser, and I'm going to be the first negation speaker. As an off-time roadmap, I'm going to be talking a little bit about topic case, then going down for like introducing the neg, and then responding to the affirmation. Is everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, great. My time starts now. Let's start with the question of framing. They tell you that like to prove this resolution true, they have to prove that debate is an activity that trains people or teaches people to change the world for the better. But they tell you that changing the world for the better is subjective. We don't think this is true. We think that there are material actions that are good and material actions that are bad. We think that it is bad if the U.S. were to nuke a random country the next day. And we think that it is good if the U.S. were to provide a bunch of humanitarian aid to the country. That tells you that there is a bright line and there is an objectivity, or there is an objective definition of what changing the world for the better is. The negation is going to introduce it now. We think that for the affirmation to prove that they teach debaters to change the world for the better, debate has to create people that have the goal of calling into question systems of oppression in the current world and trying to uplift minorities. We think that is the best way of defining changing the world for the better, looking to, systems of oppression. With that, let's move on to the negation case. Now, the first contention is that of double standards. The claim here is that extreme double standards exist in debate along gendered lines. We tell you that non-men and men debaters debaters have completely different experiences, which means that when these debaters enter the real world and when these debaters become policymakers, they become bad policymakers. Let's start with the stats. We tell you that a study of 1,000 ballots found that non-men debaters received comments about being too aggressive and assertive twice as frequently as male-identifying debaters. Rich Kowalik, the director of speech and debate at the Laurel School in Iowa, found while male-identified debaters received criticism about being aggressive, they were still 50%. They still had a 50% probability of winning. When female debaters or non-male debaters received criticism about being aggressive, there was a 75% chance that they would lose. We also tell you female teams are 17%, or non-male teams are 17% less likely to win against male teams. The impacts of this are twofold. One, competitive debate burns out non-male debaters. It tells you that they enter the space, they get themselves shut down, they internalize things about being too aggressive, and we tell you that it is bad for their quality of life. It means that they are less likely to want to become policymakers. We tell you that that makes policymakers more ivory tower, less likely to look into issues of gender depression. But the second impact is that even if these women are, or even if non-male debaters do become policymakers, debate creates policymakers that perpetuate the standards against women. We tell you the Warren and Hillary Clinton, when she was running for president in 2016, people told her that her voice was too shrill and she yelled too much. We tell you that that is an example of policymakers internalizing the same methodology and same ideology that is entrenched in the debate space right now. That is why we think that it creates policymakers that do not create good change. But on to the second DA. We tell you that debate creates high school students that are unrealistic. The overall claim here is that because we get things like fiat, debaters do not correctly interrogate the state, and they think that it is easy to pass policies. This leads them to be utopianists and bad policymakers and not change the world for the better. For example, a Harvard study found that only 9% of policy had sustained and improving long-term impacts. An 18-year study from Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin Board found that in around 1,600 people, realists had higher levels of life satisfaction compared to both optimists and pessimists. We saw that overly optimistic people experience 11.8 to 13.8% more distress. So again, the claim here is that because we get fiat, because we role play as the affirmative, we think as debaters that passing policy is easy. It's not easy. And so when us as debaters become policymakers, we do not pass good policies. We are unrealistic. For example, we tell you that unrealistic economic promises can lead to extreme inflation by driving money supply to grow without an increase in productivity. Or politicians who make unrealistic promises to get elected and don't deliver result in voters becoming disillusioned with the political process. That tells you that debaters who are hyper-realistic when they become policymakers, they are bad. This means we are not changing the world for the better. But then the final contention is about desensitization and about how debaters literally view impacts and view people as bodies. We tell you that because debate is competitive, as like the two sides against each other, we have an incentive to weigh bodies against bodies. As the affirmative, they will stand up and tell you, we saved 90,000 people and the negation kills 20,000 people. We then see bodies and human beings as mechanisms to the ballot, and this desensitizes these bodies. We tell you that in psychology, there's the illusory truth effect. Repeated information is perceived as more truthful than new information. That tells you that debaters keep repeating this ideology that people are bodies. That means when they become policymakers, they don't actually care about helping people, but it also means that we create things like charity cannibalism, where we create our own problems so that we can go in and solve them, because we don't see people as people, we see people as bodies, and we see solving problems and solving the quality of life of people as like solving for bodies, solving for objects. Especially minorities. We think that like indigenous people become commodified in debate. We think that this is specifically bad for later advocacy. Let's move on to the app. Now, the first thing that they talk to you about is real-world higher education, is real-world education. Now, the first thing they talk to you about is higher education. Debaters pursue like higher education more. That might be true, but we think that the double standards disadvantage means that when they are in these places of higher education, they engage with it in really antagonistic ways. We think that women in debate, when they go to higher education, they are afraid of speaking up, and we think that males in the debate space, when they go to higher education, talk down on their female students, talk down on their female professors. That probably means that the impacts of higher education aren't that good. They tell you that role playing as debate improves empathy. We understand the other. We think that the fact that people reject the resolution and read K's means that this isn't true, and you can use their own second advantage to check this. Then they tell you that fiat is good, it resists nihilism. We tell you that fiat goes way too far in the opposite direction. We think that fiat creates debaters that are way too utopian. We think that people have to be realistic about the state, and we think that people need to engage in like activism, like boots on the ground activism. And so that resists nihilism, but it isn't utopian to the point that nobody can actually be saved in the long run. Then they talk to you about people learn more about like voting, but the warrant is about like MPs from India. That was what my POI was going to be about. I don't think that we have an explicit link about it's debaters that are better at like voting. I think this is more a link about higher education. People like educated people are better at voting. We think that this impact is just not relevant to debate. On to the second question of tech debate. On the first question of critiques, the big response here is that most critique alternatives are not material actions. We think a lot of critique alternatives are about like rejecting something really big or about like using a certain theory. That means that all the stuff that they talk to you about calling for change and about trying to get to the state just isn't true in their world. We think like a really popular case is Buddhism, where you say "mu" to the resolution. We don't think that this actually helps people change the world for the better, which is done materially. They talk to you about epistemology and ruptures, but we tell you that when people are afraid of hitting K's, it literally floods, it creates an incentive for them to look up responses to critical argument, and it makes them more upset about critical arguments. So we think debater backlash means that epistemology doesn't actually get ruptured. Then on the second question of theory, we think that most theory is frivolous nowadays. Like, we don't think that people are actually norm setting anything in debate. We think that it's all frivolous, and we don't think that this is actually helpful for advocacy skills. Then they say that tech is accessible. This isn't true. We tell you that schools that have more money get their coaches to coach them on how to respond to Ks. Schools that have big back files have A2s. We don't think that tech is accessible. Then on this final question of leadership, we don't think that debate co-captains actually do anything. Tab is in charge of assigning pairings, of assigning rooms, of assigning resolutions. We don't think that the leadership skills that people get from being co-captains are really transferable and help people change the world for the better. For those reasons, vote next.
Great speech.
Hey, great speech. Order is going to be pretty simple. I think it'll be some stuff on the top of case. Then it'll be onto the disadvantages and then the advantages. I'm just telling you why you should be voting for Yup. Hey. Time begins in 3, 2, 1. Hey, we can see, let's just do whatever's good for everybody on the weighing mechanism. It doesn't really matter too much. Then I'm just wondering how it creates people challenging systems of oppression and whatnot. We said that an important part of the positive change, but this is an important part of positive change, but other benefits like increasing general access to education and whatnot also are really important. Not only marginalized groups or women are the people affected by war or bad policy making. We should evaluate everybody in this round and the impact of everybody's probably what's going to be what we want to evaluate. Okay. Moving on to their first contention about double standards. The first contention about double standards was basically just saying that debate is really sexist and that's a really bad thing and that it teaches women to oppress themselves and whatnot. There's a couple of responses here. The first thing is turnness. The fact that my opponents recognize this proves that debate teaches about oppression and it teaches how to respond to it. It proves that my opponents have the knowledge and are able to actually critique feminism in the debate space and critique the fact that the debate space is not perfect. It teaches us to stand up for myself. The fact that my opponents are able to come into this round and read about how the debate space is sexist and how we ought to change that and why that might mean the debate space is not perfect means we're able to interrogate systems that aren't perfect and are actually able to change them. Also, they say debate is a really bad thing and it's really sexist, but I tell you debate is not perfect. Of course it's not. But we tell you debate has a lot of room for reform, except by the fact that, for example, NPDL recognizes sexism exists in the debate space. They provide 2 extra TOC points to help them qualify. While this obviously doesn't solve the issue, it proves that there's room for reform and there's room for the world to change. So by the fact that even if debate is sexist, it literally proves the fact that women are able to actually stand up for themselves. Also, I'll extend this more later. It's going to be really important to the rest of their case. But judge, the entire world, there's sexism pretty much everywhere. You're going to face it in school, you're going to face it in work. This is a fact. It's not a good thing, but it's a fact. But we should know, why is debate uniquely good for this? Because even if sexism exists in debate compared to other activities actually teaches you to stand up for yourself. It teaches you that yes, sexism exists. It teaches you that yes, femcases are a good thing sometimes. It teaches you yes, they critique all of these systems. So by teaching you that yes, these problems exist, instead of just shutting them or keeping them under the rug, it teaches you to actually stand up for yourself and defend yourself against them, which is why debate uniquely is good for like solving feminism, even under the gender standards, double standards of contention. So turn this, because debate's like really the only mechanism we have and only like key activity that actually solves for like stopping double standards and other activities in the world in general. Okay. Then on this point, the second point about how it's unrealistic, and about yacht, there's a difference between unrealistic and like uneducational. First is term. Debates can also happen about like systems of government for like whatnot. Like we understand how like the government works better. Like look at how we literally had a debate earlier today about Trump imposing tariffs on like Mexico and whatnot. And we talked about the Supreme Court and how Trump overruled the Supreme Court. So we talked about all these different discussions about how like, for example, the government works. And then also debaters understand like what a good policy is like by just reading case in a policy round. Like unrealistic policies just like can't pass, right? And even if my opponents try to claim that policies are like unrealistic, we don't know what is and isn't realistic, so it makes sense for us to debate like all different kinds of advocacies, right? This is why we're debating about like the Western Balkans or the EU or the US or like Mexico or Cuba. We debate about like literally everything. So even if some like things that we do debate about don't ever come to happen, some of them will, and it's good that we debate about them, it's good that we learned about them. Hey, then on the third disadvantage about desensitization. The basic point, they just say like, oh, we're basically just commodify people and just see them as numbers. But there's a couple of reasons why this is false. First, look at advocacy. We like go through case. Like case don't commodify people. Case literally look at specific problems. We talk about like, for example, settler colonialism. Like I literally implore you, Judge, gut check this. Have you ever heard a high schooler outside of the debate space actually critique the U.S. government for not like giving land back to indigenous people? It just like doesn't really happen. Literally, like the debate space specifically tells us to not commodify people. It tells us to look at specific problems and specific grievances that people have. It teaches us to see their point of view. It teaches us to see the things that people have done wrong. And it teaches us that like yes, people, everybody like has like lives and has like an impact that matters. Like, and also it's better like even if you buy this fact that we commodify people, it's better to like not to be ignorant about the world, because someone who doesn't do debate isn't going to learn about a lot of the impact on all of the death and colonization and all these terrible things that happen in the world. Like for example, so they're not going to learn about a lot of the genocides that are happening. They're not going to learn about the wars that are happening. So debaters literally just knowing about this means that we're more aware about the world and we're going to take more action in order to reduce this. Because even if debaters do like commodify things, that doesn't mean debaters are literally like heartless people. Like literally gut check this yourselves. And I don't believe my opponents are like this either. I don't want people to die. I think my opponents are the same way. So I think it's completely intuitive that we would stop people from dying, like regardless of whether they commodify them or not. Like we all like care about people in our lives. Debate is not some totalitarian theory where whatever goes on in debate controls the rest of our lives, and whatever we say in debate totalizes how we live our entire lives. It's just not true. Also, except the fact that debaters are just human, they have empathy. Look at how like, lots of debaters intentionally appeal to like judges' rhetoric to like lay judges, like how like persuasion itself is super important. Okay, then also you can accept the fact that people are like super nice, they talk to each other inside of the debate space, and like the debate space is just a great place to make friends. Okay, moving on to the specific advantages. First advantage is on they just accept this point like double standards, it's antagonistic, and women are afraid. But again, sexism exists everywhere, just crossed by what I told you everywhere else. And how the debate space uniquely teaches us to stop double like standards. It literally promotes the idea of like feminism case, which I like talk about later in the tech contention. Like literally today I hit a feminism case. I learned about feminism, and it proves that women can advocate for themselves. In no other space in the entire world can women or oppressed groups advocate themselves equally, like just fairly to a judge, to a person, without being interrupted, without being criticized. You literally win on them so much. Like for example, I think 2 years ago at TOC, a team reading a feminism game went all the way to semifinals. That proves that like people do win on these things. Hey. You can also, on this fact about like there's no link to education, on this like statistic and this warrant I gave you about like India, I literally told you this entire first point about how debate is educational, like topic education about like housing, policies, just international relations, etc. This proves first debaters are just more educated about things in general. And I also gave you a warrant about how debaters are like more likely to go to post-secondary enrollment by like over 29%, which proves that they're just more educated in general just by doing debate. That is a warrant. It directly links to education, and education directly links to good policy making. For example, voting with like 67% of Trump's voters not having college degrees, and I think both of us can agree that like Trump's like policies have been net bad. Like for example, they view the idea of the U.S. just randomly bombing a country being bad. Like, Trump literally did that with Iran. That's a perfect example of how we don't vote for bad policymakers when we do debate because we learn more about the world. That's why it's an easy place for you to vote. Because the entire idea about voting and policymaking pretty much was pre-dropped. You can just accept the fact that we make good policies, and policies might have the largest impact in the world, and voting is like the best way to make an impact. Okay, on the second advantage about tech debate. They say that most cases like aren't material and they just like reject stuff and they really like Buddhism and all this like bullshit. But we say that also like material arts and like even like non-material arts are important. Like for example, just thinking about the world and interrogating like different ideas is key to how we do things, right? Interrogating like epistemology, interrogating what religion you might follow, interrogating patriarchy. Even if these ideas are abstract and non-material, it's still important to learn about them because it perceives how we do things in the world, because how we shape the world. For example, like learning about patriarchy in the debate phase by hitting a femke or reading a femke teaches us how this exists in places outside of the debate phase. It teaches us how it exists in countries like the United States or China or different institutions. And by learning about this, we actually learn how to solve this, and we learn that we ought to critique these things. Then they say like people read like double down on case, but this is just false. Like judges vote on them. Other people also read case. Yeah, so like other people also read case. Yeah, case are like not every round. It's like a very specific kind of like debate that happens, not all the time. And then on this one of the tech debate thing, it says they say schools with more money are better, but even if there are better, like everyone can still access tech debate like a judge. I did not have I didn't have a judge for the first like 2 years of my debate career. I still learned tech because like I just hit it, and you can always like just find resources online. And also like captains do nothing, but they drop the fact that leadership can be is created because of the debate, and there's a lot of different debate structures for different schools. Never proud to affirm. Thank you.
Hello judges, my name is Hannah Fang. I'll be the second speaker for the negation set of today's debate representing Nueva School. I'll be going top of case, like framing, and then affirmation, then negation. My time will begin in 3, 2, 1. Now judge, the main thing you need to understand about debate is that it's a uniquely competitive sport and therefore it gamifies a lot of things, which is why we don't see real world impacts. In fact, it harms the real world. Let's get straight into the affirmation case. Now the first thing I tell you is going to be education. We kind of across apply the double standard here. I'll explain more on the sexism link on our side, but the main thing you have to understand here is that if I advocate for myself as a woman in the real world, I'll deal with real world impacts. But if I advocate for myself as a woman in the debate space, it gets gamified. If I advocate for myself, I run a contention about women, it gets weighed against something else, and me as a woman gets put as a body. It gets gamified, and I get outweighed by other things. I've seen a lot of rounds where like women and minorities get just simply outweighed by more bodies. This is what we're talking about when we say that people are commodified and it is gamified. I am not being taught to advocate for myself because I'm being taught to advocate for myself within a game itself. If I advocate for myself against sexism in school, this is a real world impact and I have real discussions, but in debate, everything is turned into a game and everything is done for the ballot. That is something that proves to you that we don't see a lot of real world improvements because of debate. Now they also try to tell you, and they also tell you like, under this education thing that a lot of real world debaters get into higher education, but we also tell you that when they go into education, they often have a double standard. Another thing on the sexism one is not only does it teach women that they can't advocate for themselves because it's a game, but it also teaches men that women being aggressive is a bad thing. On the statistic that women who are being told they're aggressive have a 75% of losing, creates a link in the male debaters' minds that being aggressive is linked with losing a debate round. Thus, being aggressive as a woman is linked with being really bad. Thus, teaches male debaters that women are really aggressive and this is a very negative thing. This means that when men get into higher education after coming out of debate, they're more likely to disrespect their women professors, to think that a lot of the women who speak up in class are disrespectful. These are links that are created in people's minds, especially in really competitive spaces where everything is really high stakes and emotions are really high and rationalization is down. Under all of these conditions that debate creates, it means that a lot of people aren't thinking rationally and are in very high stress situations, and when things get repeated to you over and over again, as psychology states in the illusory truth effect, you tend to believe them. If you keep seeing women lose because they're being aggressive, you thus believe that women are bad because they're aggressive and thus deserve to lose. This gets stuck in your mind. Like, it's a very bad thing and it's likely not their fault, but it's the truth on what's happening. Okay, also, on the policymaking thing, a lot of people, sorry.
You say they're bad policy.
They're also like bad policymakers. We'll extend that a little further later on. But on the education thing, again, we're just like, it's a turn that like going to higher education is actually good. Oh, on the voters thing, there's no link between like debaters just being like better voters. To tell you, it's like related to education. We don't think this is a war you should feel comfortable voting on. We're talking about debate and going into policymaking, not on like voting itself. Okay, now on their second contention of tech debate. There's actually going to be a really big turn thing on this K debate. They actually tell themselves that a lot of debaters don't go into like the real world and criticize the government for things they advocate in debate. This tells you that everything that's run in a K is often a game. Like, let me know if you literally see a team do their actual alts like outside of the debate space. What this also tells you that people gamify Ks. So people like gamify this idea of like capitalism. They think it's like a game. Like I can fight against a capitalist society and like run this like fun alt while not actually doing anything in the real world. This. Yeah, my opponents literally said word for word that like no one is going to the government criticizing them against like colonialism and indigenous people. Like this literally proves to you that you gamify like Ks. So like yes, you're getting education about Ks, and this is good. You're getting education about how to fight against the state, but it's a gamified version of this education. There's a difference you have to understand here, that because uniquely debate is so competitive, everything under debate is gamified. I literally saw someone like who was reading the news and saw war happen and went, oh, this is great. This is going to be a great link chain for my debate. This literally proves to you that people understand the world through a distorted view because they are so like everything is gamified in debate. Also, as my partner explains, which goes job is like if people are really scared of hitting Ks, they're going to learn to like resent like movements. They're going to learn to resent like dual part, learn to resent like movements that are fighting against the state because they get so scared of them in Ks and keep getting dropped to them because of this like gamified thing. They get scared, and in the real world, they're likely to not engage with these movements because they know it's like because it's so gamified and abused in debate. They're just not going to want to engage because they don't believe it's going to be truthful. Unlike theory, we say that majority of this is free theory. It's not going to apply to actually helping you advocate for yourself. And again, advocating in a theory is it's like also gamified. They run this like they say this argument that a lot of people like try to appeal to lay judges. This just shows you that everything is done for the ballot. It's a gamified version. On leadership, we don't think this is unique. There are a lot of other ways to get leadership within high school. Also, yeah, Tab runs the tournaments, like that's where the actual leadership is. Like, thanks for like judging us and like for spending your time doing this. Like, this is Tab, not actual high school students. Okay, let's move on to the affirmation. First, I'm gonna go over, the negation. First, I'm gonna go over this like unrealistic thing. They try to tell you, yeah, they make some responses here, but I think they misunderstand what our link chain on this unrealistic contention is. The link chain here is that as policymakers, when we like fiat, we just like skip this whole part about passing policies. So if you were to become a policymaker in the real world, you would just like imagine that every policy is made ever because you always fiated it in high school and like you believe like illusory truth about it. You believe these things to be true. So if you were to become a policymaker after doing debate, you wouldn't really understand how real policies are passed. You would think that every policy was going to be passed because that's what you're used to, and you would like it would lead to like inflation, as my partner said, all these warrants on how like unrealistic economic things lead to inflation. It makes like other voters like disengage when you don't deliver on your promises. And also on like desensitization, again, all of this like gamified, as I kind of explained, all of this is literally leading you to believe that bodies are just bodies. That bodies are just bodies, and also that and also you're just like appealing to judges. Like again, especially when it comes to like minorities and women, when you like weigh against these people, when you weigh like bodies over bodies, you just think of people as bodies, you think of them on like a scale, and so you don't actually get to understand these real people and have like empathy towards these people. They try to tell you that debate is still good because it gives you education, like you still learn about like said bodies. We tell you there's so many other ways to get education that aren't debate, that don't commodify and gamify these people. Like you can do like, where you like debate real policies and how policies are passed. You can do like, you can read the news, you can like, we learned about a lot of this in history too. Like there are other ways to learn about history and learn about what's happening in the real world without making it gamified and making a competition. This also leads to like charity cannibalism, which means that you are so used to wanting to fix these solutions and prove that you're good that you create real problems just so you can fix them and prove yourself to like be a savior. This is a dropped link that our opponents don't respond to. This literally proves to you that debate is going to commodify a lot of things. And so debate is not like completely bad. There are benefits to debate. Like you learn about real world education, you get all of these things. But the main thing you have to understand here, Judge, is you learn about these in a distorted view. You learn about the world in a distorted view. You learn about passing policy in a distorted view. You learn about you interact with other people in a distorted view because it's such high pressure and you are under this competition all the time. This means that when you go into the real world, anything you see in the real world is going to be desensitized because of the illusory truth about it, where things you know are familiar and you believe them to be true. This means that when people go into higher education, they go into policymaking, they're going to view people as bodies. They're going to view them as just like on a weighing scale because we use like net benefits all the time. This means you're going to view women as aggressive, as really bad. And so this is going to be the most important impact of today's debate because it really applies to everything outside the debate space. The second you leave the debate space, your view is still distorted. This applies to anything you do outside of the debate space. You leave debate in a distorted view of the world, and so anything you perceive in this world is now distorted. It doesn't matter if they try to go for higher education, if they try to go for policymaking, if they try to go for any of their other impacts, because anything they say is already tainted by all of this distortion analysis we give you. Anything you do outside of the debate is distorted because of the illusory truth effect, because you're always told that policy is going to be fiated, that women are aggressive, that Ks are just games, that theory is just a game for the ballot, etc., etc. Vote no. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, judges. My name is Mars Resser again. I will be talking, an overview, some framing stuff, weighing, and then some preempts. Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. My time starts now. At the point that the affirmative concedes that debate desensitizes suffering and makes human beings' bodies, you vote neg. Let's start with the framework. Now, both sides agree that for the affirmative to prove the resolution true, they have to prove that when high schoolers leave the debate space, they change the world for the better, and they try to do this, and this is quantified through material actions. Do they pass good policies? Do they engage with their government? Do they try to do good things, etc.? Now, we think that as the negation, we have a very, we think that as the negation, the collapse here is on this question of desensitization, on this question of bodies. And we think that you feel very comfortable voting here because we literally have a concession from the AF. They tell you that, okay, fine, maybe this commodification happens, but at least people still learn about it. We think that it is so accessible for people to learn about genocide. Sans debate. My partner gives you examples. Model UN, the internet, the news, the radio. We tell you that debate is not key for learning about mass genocides in the world. So then at the point that debate makes you view mass genocides through the most dehumanizing lens possible, we tell you that debate cannot possibly create people that are trying to change the world for the better. We have the conceded psychological theory that tells you that when you repeat information again and again, you internalize it. That means that because every single round we weigh bodies against bodies, when we leave the debate space, that is the only way we are going to see bodies. And then on the conceded charity cannibalism link, this is the cleanest place that you vote neg. I tell you in the LOC that when people see bodies as bodies and see suffering as like ticks, like pros and cons, and not as real things, it leads people to be so obsessed with being saviors that they create their own problems just to justify solving them. This goes completely conceded. That means that the negation has proved that high school doesn't just not make people not change the world for the better. It actually makes people change the world for the worse. They want to do things that cause suffering. So that tells you that high school debaters do not change the world for the better. We have so much conceded here. We have it conceded by the affirmative when they get up and tell you that nobody asked the U.S. federal government to stop the erasure of indigenous culture and to repatriate indigenous land. That tells you that every single debater commodifies suffering, commodifies minorities, commodifies bodies for the ballot. And as my partner explains, that distorts every single thing that they do. Even if the affirmative wants to get up here and talk to you about passing policies and talk to you like economic policy, whatever, we tell you that as these policymakers, you are not, when you pass these policies, you are not thinking, how can I help this mother feed her children? How can I, raise the minimum wage so that people can support their families? You are solely thinking about human beings as bodies, meaning that the policies you pass are never going to be good, are never going to alleviate any suffering. The affirmation has no outs because anything they go for in the real world is distorted and gamified. Again, the conceded psychological theory we read you on this third contention supercharges this, meaning every single thing they see is gamified. But let's go quickly on to the affirmative for the outs. On this real-world education thing, we have a lot conceded about how when males internalize these standards on the debate space, they are meaner to their classmates and meaner to their professors. That probably means that high school debaters are worse in higher education than not. Just because they get to higher education doesn't mean that means that they change the world for the better. We think what they do in that higher education is just as important. Then on the second question of tech debates, we think that critiques are very ivory tower. Look to the fact that so so many people do not pursue their alt in the real world. Again, that supercharges the body thing. And on the final question of leadership, they concede that debate coaches don't actually do anything. That means that even if debate does create coaches, it doesn't mean that those coaches change the world for the better. For all those reasons, vote nay.
Alright. Wonderful block. Order is gonna be, I'll be honest, this might be a little bit messy, but it's just gonna be explaining where you vote F and then why you don't vote A. Time begins in 3, 2, 1, go. You vote affirmative because K's forced debaters to make change in the real world. 1. Extend the non-unique on sexism. We tell you that 8 points that sexism always exists in and outside the debate space. No matter if you debate or not, you will always experience sexism no matter where you are. They tell you this, but debate gives us a unique space to actually interrogate the systems of oppression that they critique so much. B. That this zeroes all the offense because they don't actually give you a reason why K debates don't solve. They tell you the sequence that they tell you that K's get gamified, but this is literally ridiculous to say. Imagine a debater reading a femcade. You tell 2 female debaters that their femcade isn't actually genuine and they don't actually care about feminism. Like, that's obviously ridiculous to say. If you're a female debater reading a femcade, obviously you care about feminism because it actually affects you. If you're a debater reading a capcade, obviously you care because capitalism actually affects you. You think that the effort it takes you to write a K is so extensive that obviously you're gonna begin to develop feelings for the K. They literally tell themselves that when you say these things, you start to believe them, right? When you start to repeat things, you start to believe them. So you keep repeating yourself. You say capitalism is bad. Obviously you're gonna start to believe that capitalism is bad. When you start repeating your all to other. Sorry, you say something?
So our like statistic about the illusory truth, like psychology theory came out on the very first next speech, and now you're applying it to your case.
Well, what specific? Is it
So you're making the argument that because we said repeating K's makes you think they're true, that means repeating K's makes you think they're true, but we know that's a very
I don't think this is a new argument. I think it's like we've told you that K's are genuine since the first round, or the first speech. This is like.
All right, we'll take it into account.
Okay, I'm at 55 seconds. Time resumes in 3, 2, 1, go. So we think that when people read K's, obviously they're genuine because it actually affects them, and obviously it takes a lot of effort to write a K. And when you're researching the impacts of capitalism, you're probably gonna feel bad. Then we do that the K debate is the most pragmatic form of debate in the first place. They drop the pre-fiat impacts. K's actually talk about the real world separately from other activities. And K's actively talk about how to solve things in the real world because impacts in the real world actually matter. Even if it's not the alternative, we think that they always have impacts in the framework and other things in the first place. And that even if you buy that as a game, we still win the round because it teaches these systems are bad. Even if you think it's just for a ballot, it doesn't matter because no debater is going to read a cap K and just believe capitalism is actually good because of the effort it takes to write a K. Also, don't let them say K debate isn't genuine because it is. Except that judges also aren't dumb and they won't look at things that are non-genuine. K debate is yeah. So even if you buy it's a game, it's still good because even if you were reading it for a ballot, you're still going to go into the world with the mindset that things are bad. Yes.
Okay, we think the argument that judges would never vote up a K that they don't think is genuine is new.
Judge discretion. I don't think it's super important. I'm at 146. Time resumes in 3, 2, 1, go. This means any sort of distortion argument because people in debate understand the harms of what you're doing. Even if you're reading it for a ballot, it doesn't matter. You still think capitalism is bad. You still think feminism is important. Then, then debaters will also take advantage. They literally tell you that debaters will take advantage of war, but that also doesn't mean debaters are going to do bad things just so they can have an impact in the debate round, which is like absolutely ridiculous thing to say. We also think that K debate is accessible. They drop every single word we give you. The first one is connections. Debaters are just nice people in general. You can talk to anybody you want. They will help you out with Ks. You can talk to alumni if you have them. You can talk to experienced college debaters. People are willing to help you in the debate space. The second thing is that we tell you there's lots of online resources. You can go on YouTube, Circuit Debater, The Debate Guru, so many different websites that have access to K debate. Even if other schools are better at it than you, it doesn't matter as long as everyone's able to understand the K, which is easy to do in the current world because of all the resources available to everyone. Then, on commodification. Except that we are humans before we are debaters. We have empathy, friends, family, etc. My partner tells you this. We're not absolute monsters. Debaters do not debate 24/7. We have feelings. We understand that death is bad. No one actually wants people to die just because they do debate. They literally, what they're doing is kind of ridiculous. They literally have to prove debaters actually want bad things to happen in the real world just because we talk about death. There's also, my partner tells you, it goes both ways. Like, yeah, you say death is good. You also say death is bad. We want to save lives as well in debate too, so it doesn't matter. Their own speech acts literally prove this is false. When they talk about things like double standards, I think they're genuine. I think they actually care about the double standards that exist in the world and debate space. For me to say they don't actually care about double standards is ridiculous to say. Like they told you, when you say these things, you believe them. And debate is about solving oppression. Okay. On real world versus like gamified advocacy, debate advocacy is a prerequisite to real advocacy because debate teaches you to actually stand up for yourself. It's unique to K-debate and policy education. This also turns their offense because it creates an easy place to vote gov because a dropout debate uniquely allows people to advocate for anything while sexism is everywhere. Like literally debate is so unique, especially K-debate, because you have 8 minutes to just talk about feminism to the judge. This is uniquely good because nowhere else in the world will people actually sit down, listen to you, and have a discussion about feminism that actually leads to any sort of productive discourse. Except that reform happens through debate in the real world, and the NPDL in the world because NPDL can provide 2 TOC reports, which obviously doesn't solve the problem, but it proves that change is possible and there are steps to create change. Also, except that women win a lot because with fem case, and someone even went to TOC settings with the fem case, that proves that fem case, unlike other cases that annoys are challenge system oppressions, are effective in the real world. Next, the other place you can vote is on voting. We can see really undercovered by the opposition. They took there's no link to education, which is false. They can see that debaters learn about the real world through topical education, and also that 29% of debaters have an increase in post-secondary operation. If you don't want to evaluate anything else in this round, this is probably the easiest place to vote because it has the strongest strength of link. When you are more educated, you will make better decisions when you're voting. And if you want to make better decisions when you're voting, that also challenges system oppressions if you want to go with the real mechanism. And the easiest way to create change in the real world is to elect politicians that can create change. Every debater might not become a policymaker, but every debater will probably end up voting for a politician, and if you are more educated, you will just make better decisions, which means you will make the world a better place through voting. The only empiric impact on probably the largest in the round comes from this because they can see that Trump is also bad, and 67% of voters voted for Trump don't even have a college degree, which means that when you are educated and you get a college degree, because you compete in competitive debate, you will make better decisions and make the world a better place through policy and politics. No, I'm proud to affirm. Thank you. Good round, guys.
I think the TOC fan case that is
Not our team, I think.
that's our team.
We did.